Welcome back to another edition of Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander, and as I've keeping my word from the last video, I want to go over the state of boxing right now, as well as review a couple of things that have happened. Those of you who want my opinion about Canelo and Triple G, I want to do a quick review, and this is what basically, it was the rebroadcast of that fight I watched last weekend that really woke me up to this epiphany I spoke about in the last video, that the change is almost complete. It's totally complete now. It's absolutely complete. We're starting with a fresh slate of up-and-coming boxers and guys who are at the top of their game right now. And I wanted to start off by talking about the Canelo Amir Khan fight, because a lot of people were giving Canelo flack for taking this fight. And there's more to the story that meets the eye, or that the general public knows about, and that's happened since I've been gone. The fight went as most predicted. Khan got off to a fast start, and I want to stress that he put forth an extremely good effort on his part in this fight to last as long as he did and perform as well as he did. Canelo, consummate professional. He is almost a throwback to fighters. I've been watching a lot of fights on YouTube from the early to mid 80s of champions like Jeff Chandler and Lupe Pintor and Aaron Pryor and so on and so forth, and I watch how they pace themselves. Alexis Arguello, they never get too excited if a guy jumps out to a lead on them. You know, Floyd Mayweather was like this too. He measures them, sees what they got, takes what they got, and then starts inching closer and closer, and that's what Canelo did. And he started touching Khan, and finally in the 6th round, he had started crunching him with body shots, right hands to the body, started out jabbing Khan in the 4th and 5th rounds, and then basically feinted a jab, came over the top of the right hand, and knocked Khan out cold, folded him up. When Khan was laying on the canvas, did anybody notice the welts that were on his left side from where that right hand was landing? He was getting tagged. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out, and the fight went as predicted. Now, what everybody's clamoring about, including Khan and Virgil Hunter, is that now Canelo needs to fight Triple G. I agree with this, in the sense that boxing thrives when the best fighters are fighting each other. And what woke me up out of this coma that I've been in over the past year, and almost like I almost want to ignore what was going on, is that on HBO's upcoming schedule, okay, you've got, hold on a second, I felt like there's a bug down there. Okay, let's look at Canelo and Triple G, okay, and this pertains to Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy Promotions. Since I've been gone, and even before I left, there's been a split in Golden Boy Promotions between Richard Schaefer and Oscar De La Hoya, and it revolves around who really has control of the company and the direction of that company. And here I've been, for almost the better part of a decade, deriding Golden Boy Promotions, because they were acting in a way that Don King and Top Rank have been acting, where they were just trying to sign all these fighters and lock them up, and basically they'd only be fighting each other, and we wouldn't be getting the best pay-per-view cards, we wouldn't get getting the best fights in boxing, because it was almost like a schoolyard or a sandlot game where each person was picking out, each team was picking out a different person and locking them up. So this fallout happens with Richard Schaefer and Oscar De La Hoya, and then we find out that manager, who has his own boxing series of programs that's, had locked up all these fighters like Danny Garcia, is in cahoots with Richard Schaefer. So De La Hoya finds out that the only real big name he's got signed that's not part of this management team is Canelo. And he decides, I saw him in an interview with Michelle Beadle and on the Fight Game, and he says, look, I've got to start from scratch and build this company up. This is, in my opinion, right or wrong, what's prevented the Canelo Triple G fight from happening before. And understand, I don't know that Canelo was ready for Triple G. I don't know if anybody's ready for Triple G. But Golovkin is fighting the way a fighter from back in the 50s, the 70s, the 80s would fight. He gets a hold of a title, he defends that title religiously, he tries to collect other belts, takes on whoever's out there, and hats off to David Lemieux, who is a boxer with some limits and a ceiling to his ability, but still didn't have to get. He could have made money without getting into the ring with Golovkin, and he did, and paid a dear price for it. But he survived, and he's fighting again. Obviously, he just fought on the undercard of Triple G. I mean, of Canelo and Khan. And the point I'm trying to make about this is that Canelo Alvarez is Golden Boy's meal ticket. I think they're starting to believe more and more with each performance, whether it was his thorough victory over Cotto, his destruction of James Kirkland, to now his destruction of Amir Khan, that maybe he is ready for Golovkin, if anybody ever can be ready for Triple G. Now, just to give you my opinion right now in May of 2016, I would make Triple G a somewhat comfortable favorite over Canelo, and if only for the fact that I think that Triple G is a solid middleweight with a huge amateur pedigree, a huge professional pedigree, and a skill set that I don't think, except for Mayweather, I don't think Canelo has seen up close and personal before, and Mayweather definitely does not carry the power, the destructive power that Triple G carries. He carries better defensive skills, better speed, better footwork maybe, but let's put it this way, Triple G has well above average in all those fields, and he showed in the Lemieux fight that he can fight at a distance and play defense when need to, because there was only one time in that fight where I think Lemieux landed a solid left hook on him, and it was already too late. That fight between Triple G and David Lemieux reminded me a lot of the aforementioned Arturo Gatti defense against Mayweather, where when the better premium fighter, basically the Ferrari, just pulled away and ran circles around the Escalade. The Escalade may have had more punishing power, but it was dented up and turned over on its side when the whole thing was over. And what I want to say about that is that there was never a more thorough I think watershed moment in Floyd Mayweather's career than that fight against Arturo Gatti, and I think that Triple G, to this point, that's his watershed moment of the dangerous fighter in front of him and totally dominating and thrashing that fighter. So, with this said, I would make him a solid favorite over Canelo, but I think that Canelo does have by far the best chance of upending the Triple G apple cart. For the simple reason is, if I look at Triple G approaching Canelo the same way he did David Lemieux, where it's hit without being hit, fight at a safe distance, eventually he's going to be in range to be hit by Alvarez. And the question becomes, who takes the other guy's shot better? Because we've seen both of them can take a solid shot, and it's who can take whose shot better, in my opinion. And Canelo carries a lot of what I call the Julio Cesar Chavez thudding power, the shots that stay with you when you get hit by them. So it's going to be interesting. The other glitch in making this fight is this catch weight thing that Canelo has going on. And what I'm saying about that is that this fight with Khan was fought at 155, his optimal weight. I think and Triple G has said there is no way he's fighting a middleweight title fight at anything other than 160 weigh-in and following. And one of the things I wanted to tell you guys is I did some research on this, and as I'm looking around, I went back through BoxRec and found all the fights between Jake LaMotta, who's a natural middleweight, and Sugar Ray Robinson. And this is what I found. In October of 1942, Jake LaMotta weighed in against Sugar Ray Robinson at 157 3/4 pounds, and I'm assuming this was a same-day weigh-in. Sugar Ray Robinson weighed in at 145 pounds, 2 pounds below the welterweight limit. So 147 3/4 to 145, 12 3/4 pounds, almost a 13-pound disadvantage on the day of the fight, okay? Sugar Ray Robinson won a unanimous 10-round decision at Madison Square Garden on that date. The next time they fought, February 5th, 1943, Jake LaMotta's 38th fight, Jake LaMotta weighed in against Sugar Ray Robinson at 160 1/2 pounds. Again, these are non-title fights, okay? Sugar Ray Robinson weighed in at 144 1/2 pounds. Basically, again, more than 2 pounds below the welterweight limit. Jake LaMotta won this fight, Sugar Ray Robinson's first loss, by unanimous decision. It says Robinson was knocked down through the ropes in the 8th, being saved by the bell at the count of 9. Okay, that's the fight that he knocked him out of the ring and LaMotta won a decision. Okay. Immediate, at least for Jake LaMotta, immediate next fight, a rematch with Robinson. February 26th, 1943. So basically 3 weeks after the second fight, okay? In the Olympia Stadium in Detroit, Michigan. Jake LaMotta weighs in at 160 3/4 pounds. Again, the day of the fight. Sugar Ray Robinson weighs in at 145. Again, 2 pounds under the welterweight limit. Sugar Ray Robinson wins a unanimous 10-round decision. Okay, so that's fight number 3. Fight number 4 was on February 23rd, 1945. Now, the weights are starting to get closer. Sugar Ray Robinson, Jake LaMotta weighed in at 158 pounds. Sugar Ray Robinson weighed in at 148 1/2 pounds. Sugar Ray Robinson wins a unanimous decision at Madison Square Garden in New York. So that's basically 4 fights now. All right, the next one. September 26th, 1945, just a couple of months later. LaMotta weighs in at 159 pounds. Sugar Ray Robinson weighs in at 150. This is in Comiskey Park in Chicago, Illinois. Sugar Ray Robinson wins a 12-round split decision. That's fight number 5. Okay. Then we come to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1951, Chicago Stadium, Chicago, Illinois. The middleweight champion of the world, Jake LaMotta, weighs in at 160 pounds. Sugar Ray Robinson, moving up in weight, weighs in at 155 1/2. We all know the result. Robinson stopped LaMotta in a bloodbath in 13th round. That was the last time they ever fought. The point I'm making to all of this now, that I've gone over this with you, is that I think what they ought to do, the fight's contracted at 160. Nobody's forcing Canelo to weigh in at 160. Stay at your fast, speedy 154, 155, and stipulate that nobody can get into the ring at any higher than X number of pounds above 160 if you're going to have the weigh-in the day before the fight. Or have the weigh-in the same day of the fight. Triple G's welcome to come in at 160. You come in at 154 and fight like real men back in the 1940s and 50s. I think boxing needs this fight, especially after the horrendous taste in everybody's mouth from way back in way back last year with Mayweather and Pacquiao. Now, what I'm encouraged by after watching that whole thing of the whole Canelo-Khan replay is that, as I'm telling everybody, embrace. It's kind of like the Trump people now trying to embrace the whole party or whatnot, get everybody lined up behind Hillary Clinton. Just a side note, don't expand on that. I think that everybody needs to embrace this new crop of boxers. I listen to a lot of talk radio, and one guy out on the West Coast is very enamored of Tyson Fury. I've tried to call his show and tell him that when Tyson Fury gets in the ring with Vladimir Klitschko again, there's a chance he's leaving the ring without his titles, or title, I should say, and without his senses. Because I think that might have been an aberration. But then again, Klitschko may have grown old overnight too, and it may have just been rust. I tend to think that basically Klitschko's going to be remembered a lot less in history than Lennox Lewis, because when both of them were tasked with facing a challenger or a fighter that's just as big as they are or bigger, they reacted very differently. Lennox Lewis decided in his mind he was going to destroy the guy in front of him as fast as he can before that guy destroyed him. I'm talking about a bigger opponent, like with Michael Grant or a guy like Francois Botha, or even Henry Akinwande. He tried to just get him out of the way. Guys that were bigger than him, Shannon Briggs. get rid of them before they can get rid of you. Vladimir Klitschko's reacted very differently to guys who are as big as him or bigger. He's kind of cowered a little bit from them, and I think that Tyson Fury represents more of a threat in theory than in actuality to Klitschko. But they're supposed to be fighting their rematch, and to be honest with you, I think that if Deontay Wilder or that other British guy Joshua get in the ring with Tyson Fury, it's gonna be ugly in my opinion. So anyway, getting back to the crop of fighters we need to keep track of. Deontay Wilder is one of them. Sergey Kovalev is another one, and hopefully he gets his fight with Andre Wood, who I personally think, with injuries aside, is probably the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Looked excellent in his last fight at light heavyweight. Moving down the list, obviously Canelo and Triple G. Kell Brook and a whole host of them at Keith Thurman and Sean Porter, who have a fight upcoming between each other at welterweight. HBO has a list of fights coming up, which are really exciting me. I think that Rocky Martinez, is it Chocolatito Gonzalez or Martinez? Anyway, Rocky Martinez, who's been in with Orlando Salido a bunch of times, is defending his title against the Ukrainian featherweight. Shoot, what the heck is going on with my brain? One of the best fighters in the sport. Anyway, getting back to the what do you call it? The other fight that's coming up is also I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Oh, Victor Postol versus Terence Crawford. Another interesting fight. Victor Postol, who I really didn't think was that impressive in the past, is basically fighting what do you call it? Fought in his last fight. I don't know why my mind's going blank. Like I'm doing this without having anything written